Hey everyone, it's David Barnett from davidcbarnett.com, the blog site, YouTube channel, iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play podcast, where I talk about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium-sized businesses. Today, we're fortunate. We have a guest with us, Chris Kappes, who is from the Illinois area near Chicago, right, Chris?
Yep, Chicagoland.
Awesome. And Chris is a longtime veteran of the trade show and display industry, and he has a new business of his own that he's going to talk to us about. But Chris, I wanted to just ask you a little bit about your background. Can you tell us a bit about how you got into the world of trade shows?
I like to say that I'm an exhibitionist. Well, in truth, if you ask anybody that's been in our industry for a while how they got into the business, it's really serendipitous. It's not an industry that, and I was a public relations guy, went to school as a journalist, that, you say, I'm going to go in the trade show world. You know what? If you find probably a page or two in any marketing book about exhibitions, you might be surprised that there aren't that many. Yet 40% of most budgets for corporations go into exhibiting.
And you're talking about B2B typically.
Yeah, B2B, yeah, exactly, business to business. And that's why the word trade is in front of shows, because it's business to business, right? It's not a consumer show. But in short, I started out in the PR field. I was in the agency world, and candidly, when you start out as a very junior account exec, they give you not the most glamorous things to write about. So I had the fortune, maybe not, of writing about styrofoam brand installation and their application for chicken coops. So imagine a newly minted journalist going out into Arkansas, dressed not appropriately in a suit and tie, and I'm walking in a chicken coop, and the farmer looks at me and says, "What the hell are you doing?" He's looking at me, and he gives me footies to walk into the chicken coop, because lo and behold, styrofoam, if you apply it on the walls of a chicken coop, it maintains a temperature, and that's important for chickens. Who would have thought, right? Or another situation, I'm writing about cold temperature and the importance of styrofoam. So I'm in New Orleans, again, dressed inappropriately, and I'm in a meat packing plant, and I'm freaking my butt off, taking shots of styrofoam on the walls. Or fast forward, I'm in Phoenix on top of it, in the middle of summer. I don't think I changed my clothes any of those trips. Anyway, top of a building, sweating like mad, and again, keeping a building regulated with temperature. So, long way of saying, it was a glamorous side of my life. I learned a lot. Got to see some glamorous places, and frankly, it was probably that experience that taught me that I don't want to learn more about chicken coops or styrofoam. I do like writing, but I wasn't as proficient and fast a writer as most journalists are. So I fell into the business, and I worked for, I had the good fortune working for who was really a pioneer in the space. His name was Fred Kitzing, and his wife Lene, and he fathered the term trade show marketing. And he was the first true trade show marketing agency at a time when exhibits were testimonies of corporate ego. You'd build a big exhibit because you're a big company and you wanted to show how strong you are, right? Mm-hmm. Well, his philosophy was, if you had and he tells a story that there was I don't know if you're familiar with the Foley food mill. It's a little machine that you put vegetables in, and you twist it, you turn it, and the vegetables go down in it. So
I've seen these,
yeah. So I share this little analogy that, okay, here we have these testimonies for corporate ego, and you have a little guy walking in with a briefcase, sets it up on a card table, and he's doing carrot curls or whatever he's making. And guess what? Where do all the people go? Do they go to the big exhibit? No, they go to the guy that's demonstrating.
They go to the show.
They go to what they're there to see what's new.
Yeah.
So his point was, look, an exhibit is a machine for selling. And so that philosophy borne out this idea of trade show marketing, that you've got to prepare your staff, you have to have a strategic approach to how you exhibit. You need to have a live presentation of some type that tells the value proposition of the product or service. And the exhibit, really sounds strange to say, because we did design and build exhibits, was secondary to everything else you did. And the irony is that while that is still true today, but believe it or not, if you look at the spend that I mentioned earlier, about 40% of the spend is in trade is related to exhibits or exhibitions. Only 1% of that spend goes into staff preparation. The other 99% goes into the exhibit, how it looks, setting it up, the operational side of it, sending your staff in, and guess what happens? The 1% affects the 99%. It's bass backwards.
Yeah.
So anyway, I fell into it and I've become an evangelist around this idea that, look, there's no, particularly in a time of technology where look what we're doing, right? That's where the world's going. But yet, when you're buying capital equipment, corporate jet, tractor trailers, you name, there's 10,000 shows in North America alone, in Canada, right? You don't buy things like that via the internet.
No.
You have to meet.
You want to go see them, and you want to talk to somebody.
Yeah, you have to go face to face. It's still a face to face environment. And so anyway, that's how I got into the business.
Well, Chris, it's funny because earlier today, just in getting prepared for us, I did a quick Google search and I found this really cool list of things. And it's from a UK website, but I'm sure the numbers are almost the same for North America. One of the key points it says here is that 81% of trade show attendees have buying authority.
No doubt. Yeah.
So these are decision makers who are going, like you said, they're involved in that capital equipment decision or sourcing, purchasing, what have you, and they want to go out and talk to these people.
Yeah, exactly. Well, here, think of it. I'm going to shift a little bit and pivot and help. I know your listeners are a lot of entrepreneurs who have businesses and they're spending money on shows, or they're evaluating, and they're going through this mental math of, does it make sense to go or doesn't it make sense? And the math has got to work. But think of it this way. If I'm an exhibitor, where else in the marketing mix do people come to you? So think in terms of, if I'm working in an exhibit, you should be able, when people come to you, a really active and smart qualifier, a person in the space, should be able to qualify 3 to 5 people an hour. How long does it take a salesperson in the field how many people in the field can make those numbers on a daily basis? So the math, if you start to look at the math, that's where trade shows really, really start to pay off. But it is a math exercise. There's so many people that complain about shows, largely because they're unprepared, ill-prepared, and they haven't prepared, their staff's not ready.
Well, it's interesting because on the same website that I just looked up here earlier today, it was talking about preparation, and it says that 28% of exhibitors start planning 1 to 2 months before the show, 22% 2 to 4 months, and 18%, only 1 in 5, actually start looking at it 4 to 6 months in advance.
Right.
And those are the guys who probably benefit the most.
No doubt. Yeah. I think if everyone could think of a trade show as, writing a book, everyone focuses on the cover of the book. That is the exhibit. They often overlook the strategy, the writing, the content that goes into the cover. So you can have a great cover, but if the content isn't any good, guess what? People open it and it's like they look at the exhibit, looks good, but what's the story? What does it mean to me? So the question that we have to answer always is, why would I stop? What is in it for me? Now, the interesting thing is, 86% of most people that go to trade shows have something very serious that they're looking for. They're shopping. They want us to have their issue solved now.
There's a commitment there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
You talk about skin in the game for the people who are exhibiting, but if me and maybe a couple of people from my company are traveling, spending time in hotels, we bought tickets to the show, we have hotels, we have meal expenses, we have travel expenses, we're investing a lot of money to go to learn who to spend more money with.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Where else does that happen? Right. So, when you look at, there's 10,000 shows in North America, but here's the reality. Attendance is flat. The trade show marketing budgets are flat, have been for a decade. So there's a bit of a disconnect from, optimization of the medium, and so, that is, why I launched the business. We can talk about that later. But the reality is that the industry is going through a deflection point right now. And as an evangelist of the industry, and I appreciate you having me on the program, is to help entrepreneurs optimize the investments they're making at the trade show. And the bottom line is, if the math doesn't work, you shouldn't go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. If somebody had a business and they sold to other businesses and they were not going to trade shows, what would be sort of an entry level strategy for someone who wants to make a smart first move?
I would never go into a show without having walked it first.
Mm.
So the first thing you should do is, if you are evaluating shows, go as an attendee. Approach some of the exhibitors, ask them their impression. How you feel about the show, how's show management, what's the cost? Do your due diligence in advance of, so that you're that much further ahead when you contemplate making that strategic decision.
So then you could really be a year out then.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Well, in most cases, the way the shows work in general is, if you're an exhibitor, you have preferential treatment based upon longevity of being an exhibitor. So when there's a space draw, which occurs at the end of the show, if you will, the top exhibitors who have been there the longest have the first choice of the floor. They can pick what spaces they want. So as a newbie, you're going to get the drags in a lot of cases. So you're gonna that's even more important. You have to do your homework in advance, because if you're going to be on the perimeter in the back, then you better figure out a strategy to get people to come see you there, right? So that's where, and think about it this way: shows are built in 10-foot increments. Think of them as cubes. That's what they're selling spaces, these 10-foot blocks. That's because they want to build the show around, most of the exhibitors are 10 by 10, 10 by 20 spaces. Everyone focuses on the big guys, but it's the little guys that is driving the revenue for the show organizer.
Right.
So
they're paying the highest cost per square foot.
Absolutely. Exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. So I would say always walk the show first and do your homework.
Okay. And what, some of the other things that I saw on this website, they're just fueling what you've already said. Like 92% of trade show attendees say their main reason for attending the show is to see a new product being featured.
Yep.
64% of trade show attendees are not customers of the exhibitors' companies.
Right.
That's interesting to me. So the people that are attending the trade show, we know that they're ready to buy. They made an investment to go and to find suppliers. Would you say that some of the attendance is driven because of a dissatisfaction with their current suppliers? Maybe they're trying to see who's out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's the soft science of trade shows and the hard science. The hard science are their numbers. Soft science are, you're there to see what's new. You're there to see your peers. You're there to network. In the medical field, 50% of shows are medical. You're there to get credits as a doctor, to continue to practice medicine. You're there to meet press. You're there for new product announcements. I mean, case in point, look at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. That show has 150,000 people come to Vegas. And guess what? No one buys anything. Now you say, Chris, how can that be? Well, everyone is there. And it's true with a lot of industries where there's a consolidated buying base. So it used to be, take a look at the hardware show, it used to be hardware store owner-operators every corner. Guess what? There's like 10, 15 buying groups now in the hardware industry. Same is true.
Yeah. They're all affiliated with certain brands.
Exactly. So so most business people would say, well, why in the world would you spend that kind of money to appeal to 15 buyers? Well, the reality is you wouldn't. There has to be an umbrella opportunity, and that umbrella opportunity is media. So in the case of Consumer Electronics Show, people go there, and now they've opened up to consumers to see what's new, the new gadgets, whatever that gadget is, and they're going to see the keynotes, whether it's Bill Gates speaking or whether it's Zuckerberg speaking or whoever, right? That is an opportunity to gain media that you otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to do. So that's the soft side of shows that frankly is given consolidation and what's occurring. That's where things seem to be evolving a little bit. Because look, buying trade shows, very few industries are actual buying decisions being made. It fits into the sales strategy. It helps accelerate the cycle. But in my legacy in the industry, very few orders are actually taken. And part of that is because oftentimes the shows aren't in sync with the buying cycle. Like, for example, take a look at, again, it's Consumer Electronics Show. Shows in January. That's not when the retailers buy. The Christmas season's already over. So they're looking at things that occur that now 5 or 6 months down the road. I mean, they're you know what I mean? So because of the size of the industry, you can't always put your show right into the sweet spot of when people are buying. You have a slot that you need to fit. So there has to be a value proposition built around when it occurs. And so there's a lot of that strategy that show organizers are trying to figure out, how do I make my show even more important during an off season?
You talk about the cost of a show versus the cost of going out into the field as a traveling salesperson trying to knock on doors and meet people. And I know quite a few people that are involved in business to business sales, and they do use trade shows. And I know that they spend months in advance of those trade shows sending letters and postcards and emails and phone calls and LinkedIn messages and everything to people that they are trying to meet that they haven't been able to touch base with, to let them know, I'm going to be at our industry show. Here's where our booth is going to be, and this is what we're going to have, and I'd love to meet you, just to avoid having to go out and visit all those people.
Yeah.
Depending on your industry and what your market is, those people could be very far. I remember, I've done sales for different employers in my history, but the geography has always been, it's traveling around in a car. If you're selling really big things, you might be flying around to visit people.
Exactly right. Right. Yep. And look at the cost of putting someone on the road, right? I mean, conservative salary plus T&E plus healthcare, you'd have 6 figures on a person, and they don't sell a thing, right? So, so the economics, again, the math must work first, and then you back into everything else from there.
So speaking about math, because this is why you first reached out to me, of course, is that you have a business and you were trying to tackle this problem. How can I make the numbers work better for people? Because you saw that people were trying to do more with the same money, and costs go up. But there's also kind of a green slant on this too, which I found attractive when I first met you, Chris. So why don't you tell people what it is that your business, who is it, and what's your business, and what do you do to help people out here?
Yeah, thanks. My business is called Exhibits Hub. And let me back into the thought process behind it. And I'm hopeful that it'll revolutionize and make exhibiting more affordable for 50% of the companies that don't exhibit, right?
Mm.
We talked about this before going on the air, that timing is everything. And, I've been thinking a long time about, and part of this is just based on, I've been selling exhibits and promotions for 3 decades, right? And they're expensive, and it's highly competitive. You speculate a lot from the exhibit company perspective. Buyers, are paying a lot for capital equipment, essentially, which is the exhibit. They buy it, and they may use it a couple times a year. They may use it 100 times a year. It just depends. But what I started to see is that you walk into most exhibit firms in anywhere around the world, except maybe in Europe, where it's more of a build and burn mentality. There's hundreds of exhibits that sit idle months of the year.
Mm.
And the irony is that they sit idle, but it's costing money for them to sit because the owner's paying them to store them. And then when the time comes around to use it again, they have to refurb it, pull it out, check it, be sure it's ready to go. They stage it, right? And they ship it to the show, and the cycle occurs like that. So park that a moment in your mind. So 8 years ago, Airbnb launched, and it's been called the stupidest, smartest idea out there. Who would have thought that people would be willing to make available their home for strangers to come in and use, right? Well, they started out at 2 entrepreneurs, Silicon Valley, trade shows in town, hotel rooms are sky high, and they thought, we can't meet our rent this month. We're going to start, why don't we do an airbed B&B company where, you can stay in my apartment. I'll make it available. We'll get some airbeds from Walmart, blow them up, put a little mint on the pillow, and you're in airbed B&B, right?
Yeah.
So they started the business, didn't take off. Well, guess what? 4 years later, they started to grow, and that company's Airbnb today, right? And think about it this way. They are the single largest hotel chain in the world, and they don't touch a bar of soap.
That's right.
So you look at that, and then I looked at, Uber and the ride sharing going on with Lyft, and then you look at WeWork with sharing, and then you look at just the consumer shift to acceptability of sharing. So it occurred to me, and it hasn't really caught on yet. It's starting to in the B2B area, business to business, because it's the one thing to rent a hotel room. It's another thing to borrow, in my world, an exhibit that someone else owns, right? But I thought if I could challenge the way people think and make it more affordable and put to use exhibits that otherwise sit idle, and also avoid all those natural resources, in most cases trees and so forth, being cut down, there's an opportunity there to create more value for the marketplace and to be able to do something good for the economy or for the ecology for a change. Make it more of a green opportunity. So I put together a business plan, approached a good friend who owns a major exhibit firm, and said, look, this runs counter to what you're doing, but would you be willing to invest in this idea? And he said, okay, well, here's $10,000, go and do a market test. So I went door to door, put my sales hat on, wasn't a trade show for what I was doing, and went to some of the top exhibit firms in North America and said, hey, here's what I'm thinking about. What do you guys think? Heard a lot of no's, a lot of rejection, and heard some yeses. So we built a little mini website, precursor to what I have now, and I have the next generation launching tomorrow. And I was able to knit together initially some believers that said, hey, I'm in. I will put inventory that is idle on your site. And I said, I don't want just any inventory. I want the best inventory because I want to curate the site. I don't want to be a junkyard. I want to be a boutique, right? So anyway, I launched the business in February after a year of development, and it's moving along. Right now, we're adding complementary service companies. So, for example, when you go to my site, like Airbnb, it's inspired like that, where you go up, you pick the city you're doing a show, you pick the type of size of exhibit, you pick your budget, and the algorithm on the back end of the system will bring forward exhibits that are available in that market, so you don't have to ship anything anywhere. It's there in that market, and it will be rebranded for you locally by that exhibit firm. It doesn't leave the hands of the firm, right? So what that does for the user is turnkey all-inclusive pricing. So you have to guess what it's going to cost you to exhibit. So if you're in Chicago, you're doing a show in New York, you pick your exhibit, you work directly with that exhibit firm. They'll rebrand it like they would for any client. They're going to protect that exhibit because guess what? That exhibit they're making available to you is their client's exhibit.
Right.
So there is that
kept safe and tidy to go back into storage.
Exactly. So what that does for the exhibitor is they get a better product. It's custom. It's been rebranded. It's on demand. It's ready when you walk in because the exhibit firm handles all that for you. For the exhibit firm, it's a new customer they otherwise wouldn't have, right? It's and part of the cool thing of the model is that the owner of that exhibit revenue shares. So instead of paying to have that exhibit sit in a warehouse, guess what? Now you can make some money from that exhibit when it is being used. Now, obviously there's the question, what if it gets damaged? We have protection, right? Those are the built-in safety nets so that everyone that participates is protected through the use agreement we have in place. So
the goal here is, number one, the big companies or the bigger firms that have the exhibits get to reduce cost a bit by generating a bit of revenue.
Correct.
And people who maybe have been kept out because of the big investment price tag now have a little bit of a cheaper opportunity to get into this.
Exactly. And they don't have to, think about it. I mean, ownership is unfortunately a bad word anymore. Think about it. People don't want to own cars. I mean, what do you want to own? It depreciates so many. You want to own your home, hopefully, right? But my point being that an exhibit you don't make money on exhibits when you buy them, right? Well, this is a bit run smack against that thought process. So if you are building an exhibit, that's fine if you have use for it, but you may invest more knowing that it has future ability to be used by others, right? So so the ecosystem all is able to benefit from this. The show organizer is able to attract more exhibitors because it's more affordable. The exhibitors can come in and be able to afford it, whereas in the past maybe they couldn't. and the supply chain all benefit from a new customer that otherwise they wouldn't. Best yet, we're not tearing down trees, we're not destroying things. And there's a fantastic book that sort of brings us into focus, and it's called The Donut Economy. And it's the idea that we need to be thinking regeneration of everything we do. We are basically a consume, throw away society, whereas if we can consume, regenerate, and reconsume, it's a smarter way to live, right? So I'm not here to dictate. I'm not here to, but that's the vision of the business. And yeah, and so far, the market's been very receptive. But like, as you know, as an entrepreneur, every day I'm peeling potatoes. Yeah.
Well, your vision appealed to me, which is why I wanted to have you on the show. And so there's been uptake though. You're getting some of these deals done. People are using other people's exhibits.
Yeah, absolutely. We had, interestingly enough, but we know as entrepreneurs, we're always iterating. And case in point, my first order came over was a very strange situation. One of my members couldn't handle this order or booking interest. This particular client had a show in Atlanta. She went up through the inventory and said, "I don't like your Atlanta inventory." And I said, would you be interested in something I have in Vegas? So I took her to Vegas after having had a conversation with her. Lo and behold, I thought most people are going to basically reserve something that's local. They wanted an exhibit out of Las Vegas. So we shipped the exhibit from Las Vegas. It ran counter to my methodology, my thought process. And it was in 3 weeks, she had an exhibit from the call to the time frame of it being delivered.
Well, what's the end price tag that someone would be spending on a really incredible, outrageous, large exhibit? I mean, these are the tens of thousands of dollars, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, if you're creating a new exhibit, it's like building a home. You're spending $150 to $200 a square foot. Okay. By and large.
So even shipping it from Vegas and back, if it fits in one container or one trailer, we're probably not adding more than a few $1,000s to the overall tag.
Well, you might be surprised. I mean, a truck going from Vegas to Atlanta, round trip's probably in the neighborhood of 6,000 one way. So you're talking about 12 grand and up, right? Depending on, it's one truck or not. But what I'm trying to do is create a model where the square foot cost is more in that $80 to $110 a square foot all in. So you get the exhibit and the services in that neighborhood, right? There's always exceptions. I have some exhibits that are very high end, that are more aspirational, but probably the sweet spot's in that $100 a square foot, $120 a square foot. So if you're doing a 10 by 10, let's just use the easy math, it's 100 square feet. You would take that and it costs you around $10,000 to do a show, roughly, for a 10 by 10.
With a professional appearance, not the homemade look.
That's right. If you're going with a pop-up, no, nothing against pop-ups. They have their place, and that market is a huge market. But that's not the market I play in. That's more of a commodity market, right?
So, Chris, if people want to go check out the website, would you give us the URL once again? And maybe if there's any other way people can reach out and contact you if they want to learn more about trade shows and how you can help?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's exhibitshub.com. And, I'm reachable anytime. I mean, look, I'm a founder. I'm a business owner, operator. What are hours, right? We're always on call. I can put MD next to my name, right? Yeah.
Chris, I tell people that once they become a business owner, or once they start a business, they only have to work half days, and it's up to them which 12 hours that's going to be.
It's usually not just 12 hours, is it? Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, look, I think, I am at your service. Anybody that wants to just talk about trade shows, it's what I love. I am a strong believer. I've spent my career building companies that, programs for companies to succeed in shows. So no questions too small. Give me a holler. And I think in the notes, there'll be my email address. So feel free to reach out.
Awesome, Chris. Thank you so much. I know I learned a lot, and I think everyone else did too. And just a reminder to everyone out there, if you watch this YouTube channel and you want to hear more from me, stories, opinions, ideas, etc., you should be on my email list, which you can find over at davidcbarnett.com. And Chris, thank you once again, and
Yeah, my
we'll see you
pleasure.
later.
Yes, sir. Thanks, pal.